Welcome back to Narrative Nook Cafe. I'm glad you're here with me today. Today, I will dive into Mrs. Ashcroft's story and tell you why she was so willing to destroy everything. Do make yourself comfortable. Tea is encouraged. This is a story best served warm. I will tell you a tale of 3 families bound by wealth, silence, and one unforgivable secret. Some people grow up learning how to dream. Others grow up learning how to survive. Mrs. Ashcroft learned survival early, and she learned it quietly. This is not a story about ambition, or wealth, or power. This is a story about what happens when love is rationed and responsibility is handed to a child. The house that Mrs. Ashcroft grew up in was never quite a home. It was always loud but never warm. The television stayed on even when no one was watching. Dirty dishes stacked in the sink like no one expected tomorrow to come. 12-year-old Ruby Evans, we know her as Mrs. Ashcroft, stood on a chair at the stove, wooden spoon too big for her hand, stirring noodles that had already started to stick. Behind her, a small voice. Her sister, 6-year-old Faith. "Is it ready yet?" Mrs. Ashcroft glanced at the clock, then at the doorway. "Almost. Go sit down. I'll bring you a bowl." Faith nodded and padded off barefoot. When parents forget to be parents, someone always steps in. And children are remarkably good at becoming adults when they have no choice. That night, their parents never came home. Mrs. Ashcroft served dinner anyway. Years later, suitcase open on the bed, clothes folded neatly, too neatly. Faith sat on the edge of the mattress, hugging her knees. Faith said, "You're really leaving." Mrs. Ashcroft zipped the suitcase, then stopped. She turned. "I'm graduating. I got a scholarship. This is good." Faith's voice wavered. "What about me?" Mrs. Ashcroft crossed the room and knelt in front of her sister. "Hey, look at me. I'm not disappearing. I'll call. I'll visit. This doesn't change anything." Faith nodded, but she didn't smile. Promises are easiest to make before you understand how fragile distance can be. Graduation day came and went. When Mrs. Ashcroft returned to the house, it was empty. No furniture, no clothes, no note. Just dust on the floor and silence in every room. She called relatives, neighbours, old numbers scribbled on scraps of paper. Nothing. Faith didn't leave her. She was taken by neglect, by indifference, by parents who believed distance was discipline. And just like that, Mrs. Ashcroft lost her sister for the first time. Years later, Faith was 17 when she found out she was pregnant. The clinic smelled like disinfectant and quiet judgment. She stared at the wall while the nurse spoke. "You have options." The nurse said. Faith nodded. She always nodded. James was born in a small hospital room with flickering lights and no visitors. Faith held him close. "I got you. I promise." For a while it felt like enough. Faith's boyfriend and father to her child man came around when it suited him. He paid bills, bought groceries, left cash on the counter. "I'm working. That's how I show love," he said, after Faith confronted him about his lack of attention or affection. Faith wanted to believe him. James learned early not to ask where his father went at night. Some men think provision replaces presence. Some women convince themselves that survival is the same as love. Years passed. Faith sat in her car on a quiet suburban street, phone shaking in her hand. His location glowed on the screen. She knocked. A door opened. A woman stood there, smiling politely. Behind her, children ran through the house. "Hi, can I help you?" the woman said. Faith swallowed. "Oh, sorry. Wrong house." She turned to leave, and through the open doorway, she saw him, asleep on the couch, wearing a wedding ring. The woman at the door also wore a wedding ring. Some truths don't argue, they simply introduce themselves. Faith drove away in silence. The old habits came back quietly. James noticed before Faith admitted it. "Mum, are you okay?" Faith forced a smile. "I'm just tired, baby." He wanted to believe her. She wanted to be better. But wanting and winning are not the same thing. The hospital room was too bright. Faith lay still, machines humming beside her. James stood alone as the nurse gently removed the tubes. "I'm sorry." Faith passed quietly, the way she had lived, with no one by her side except her son, James. James didn't cry right away. He just stood there, suddenly without parents, and far too used to being strong. Back in his dorm room, James stared at his phone. His father's name glowed on the screen. He deleted the contact. You don't get to disappear now. Some people collapse after loss. Others build something from the wreckage. James chose the second. Years later, a corporate office, glass walls, neutral smiles. The manager said, "Junior financial auditor, long hours, not much glory." James nodded. "I'm not afraid of hard work." The manager smiled. Late one night, empty office. James stared at spreadsheets that refused to behave. Numbers didn't add up. Names repeated. Bellamy, Harrington, Ashcroft. His stomach tightened. The truth rarely announces itself loudly. It waits for someone patient enough to notice what doesn't belong. James saved the file, labeled it carefully. Irregularities. Do not delete. James leaned back in his chair, unaware of how much his life was about to change. There is a moment, right before your life breaks, when everything still looks normal. James didn't know it at the time, but he was standing in that moment. The office was nearly empty. Only the hum of fluorescent lights and the glow of James's computer screen kept him company. Spreadsheet after spreadsheet, account after account. He rubbed his eyes and leaned closer. The numbers didn't just feel wrong, they felt intentional. James whispered to himself, "That's not rounding, that's hiding." He opened another file. Bellamy Holdings, Harrington Trust, Ashcroft Financial Group. Different names, same pattern. James had grown up learning how to survive neglect. What he hadn't learned yet was how dangerous it could be to notice the truth. James sat across from his direct supervisor the next morning. A polite man, careful eyes. His supervisor said, "You're sure about this?" James slid the folder across the desk. "I triple-checked it." The supervisor flipped through the pages, jaw tightening. "These accounts are sensitive." James straightened. "Illegal is the word you're looking for." Silence. The supervisor closed the folder. "I'll escalate this." James nodded. He didn't smile. The meetings began quietly, first with compliance, then with legal, then with people who never gave their names, men in tailored suits, women with measured smiles. Man number 1. "You're very bright, James. And very early in your career." James clasped his hands together. "That doesn't change the math." A pause. Man number 1. "No, but it does change your future." James was offered a settlement, a number so large it made his chest tighten. The lawyer said, "This is to help you transition." James stared at the paper. "And the findings?" The lawyer smiled thinly. "Will be handled." James pushed the paper back. "No." The room cooled instantly. Some people mistake money for mercy. James had learned long ago that survival without dignity was its own kind of death. The phone calls started next. Unknown numbers, heavy breathing, click. Then words from a distorted voice. "You don't know who you're dealing with." James changed his routine, stopped answering, but the feeling followed him, on the train, in the grocery store, outside his apartment. James sat alone at his kitchen table, a notebook open in front of him, a recorder beside it. He spoke quietly. If something happens to me, this wasn't an accident. He mailed copies of documents to a third party, scheduled emails, closed accounts, packed light. James didn't want revenge. He wanted time, and time required disappearance. 2 days later, the story broke. Junior auditor found washed up on river. Authorities cite overdose and accidental drowning. James read it from a borrowed phone in a borrowed room. He didn't flinch. He just exhaled. They didn't kill him. They simply finished the story they had already written. James Wilson was officially gone. Years passed. James moved quietly. Cash jobs, short stays, no photographs. He lived off savings, then his mother's life insurance. The money thinned. The anger sharpened. It is one thing to lose your mother. It is another to lose your name and your voice. Late one night, James sat at a library computer. He typed her name. Ashcroft. Images appeared. Galas, articles, philanthropy, her face. Something stirred. His mother's voice echoed in his memory. Your aunt was strong. She got out. James sent a careful email. No details, just enough. I believe we may be related. My mother's name was Faith. He waited. Mrs. Ashcroft read the message twice, then a third time. Her hands trembled. She replied simply, "Let's meet." The cafe was quiet. Rain streaked the windows. Mrs. Ashcroft sat with perfect posture, hands folded around a teacup. James entered. They looked at each other. Too long, too familiar. Mrs. Ashcroft asked, "James?" He nodded. They sat. For a moment, neither spoke. James took a breath. My mother was Faith. Mrs. Ashcroft closed her eyes. Just for a second. She was my sister. James's voice softened. She talked about you, said you protected her. Tears welled, but didn't fall. Mrs. Ashcroft said tearfully, I looked for her. James nodded. She knew. James hesitated, then spoke. They paid me to disappear. Mrs. Ashcroft stiffened. Who? James met her eyes. Your friends. The room felt smaller. In that moment, Mrs. Ashcroft understood why his face had haunted her memory. James continued. I can't work. I can't exist. I'm running out of money. Mrs. Ashcroft's voice was steady but dangerous. And they thought this was enough. James shook his head. I just wanted you to know. She reached across the table, held his hand. No, they will know. Rain fell harder. Mrs. Ashcroft looked out the window. She had lost her sister to neglect. Now she had found her nephew in exile, and for the first time in years, Mrs. Ashcroft was done being quiet. There is a moment, quiet, almost polite, right before the truth breaks everything. A breath, a sip of tea, a decision made long before anyone else realized there was a choice at all. Some women survive by staying silent. Others survive by setting fires. And Mrs. Ashcroft has matches. The room is dim, lit by a single desk lamp. Papers are spread everywhere. Old bank statements, offshore account printouts, email chains. James stands near the window, restless, and says, You're sure this is enough? Mrs. Ashcroft says calmly, James, I didn't raise myself in boardrooms full of liars just to bring half a case. She slides a folder toward him. That's 27 shell companies, 3 foundations, 1 charity gala that moved $9 million in 48 hours. James stated, They're going to say it's coincidence. Mrs. Ashcroft assured, They always do. And then we show them the signatures. She taps a page. Your signature. Forged. By my husband's firm. James freezes. Your husband? Mrs. Ashcroft said. Sold his soul years ago. I just finally asked for the receipt. Young Faith sits on the edge of a couch, shaking. Mrs. Ashcroft, much younger, holds her hands. Faith said, I just want him to love us. A younger Mrs. Ashcroft said, Love isn't something you beg for, Faith. It's something someone shows up with. Faith whispers, What if this is the best it gets? Mrs. Ashcroft swallows hard. Then we make better. James sits across from a journalist, Monique Carter. Sharp-eyed and unafraid, she asked, You're asking me to publish a story that says 3 of the most powerful families in this city framed a dead man? James said, I'm asking you to publish the truth. Monique inquired, And what happens to you after? James hesitates. I already died once. Monique studies him for a second and says, Send everything. If one document checks out, I burn it all down. Later at the Ashcroft home, Richard Ashcroft loosens his tie. He senses something. You've been distant, he said to his wife. Mrs. Ashcroft simply replied, Have I? Mr. Ashcroft, now annoyed, said, You missed the Harrington fundraiser. Mrs. Ashcroft said, I was busy. Richard sharply asked, Doing what? She meets his eyes. Remember Faith? Silence. Richard was startled. Why are you bringing up? Mrs. Ashcroft, angry yet posed, interrupted. My sister died addicted and alone. Her son was erased because your friends needed a fall guy. So yes, Richard, I've been busy. He pales. You don't understand the consequences. Mrs. Ashcroft, steadfast in her decision, said, I understand them perfectly. I've just decided they're worth it. Monique scrolls through files. Her face hardens. Oh my God. She picks up the phone. Legal, I need clearance, now. James and Mrs. Ashcroft secretly meet up. They sit side by side, exhausted. James breaks the silence and says, I used to think revenge would feel louder. Mrs. Ashcroft said, Justice is quiet at first. The noise comes after. With a smirk and a slight laugh, James says, My mum would have liked you. Mrs. Ashcroft blinks back tears. I loved her before I ever knew you existed. That doesn't go away. Phones buzz, news alerts flash, and just like that, the city choked on a story it had helped bury. Headlines appear. Financial scandal tied to 3 elite families. Accountant declared dead may have been framed. The Bellamy's gates swarmed by reporters, Harrington lawyers rushing into court. Richard Ashcroft sitting alone, stunned. Mrs. Ashcroft calmly packing a suitcase. Power panics when it realizes silence is no longer an option. Later, in the Ashcroft home, Richard blocks the doorway. You ruined us. Mrs. Ashcroft calmly replies, No, you ruined yourselves. I just stopped cleaning up after you. She walks past him, to meet up with James. James stands at Faith's grave, Mrs. Ashcroft beside him. James tells Mrs. Ashcroft, I'm still here and I have my voice back. She replied, I know. They stand in silence. They say blood makes you loyal, but truth makes you dangerous. Because some doors are closed for protection, and others are closed because no one thought anyone brave enough would ever open them. And so, dear listener, the truth has finally stepped into the light. Not with a scream, but with a signature. Not with a chase, but with a quiet refusal to stay silent any longer. Mrs. Ashcroft did not seek revenge for sport. She sought it for love, for a sister forgotten, for a nephew erased, and for herself, after a lifetime of looking the other way. But now the question lingers, as all good scandals do. Was justice truly served? Or was this merely the opening act of something far more dangerous? Tell me, if you were in Mrs. Ashcroft's place, would you have protected your family's legacy, or burned it all down for the truth? Leave your thoughts below. I do adore reading your opinions. Until next time, keep your secrets close, and your tea closer.